Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to the On the Whistle podcast. My name is Alistair Howorth. I am here in actually slightly chilly and lovely Casablanca, Morocco, ahead of the WAFCON semi-finals. We have just finished our quarterfinals last night, and there's been a big variety in games. Some thrilling games, some big surprises, and some attritional battles. The less said about those, the better, perhaps. Unfortunately for Dos Munda, who is at the South Africa game, is unable to join us. She currently is in transit from Wichita, where South Africa were playing, to Casablanca. So it's just me today. But without further ado, let's get into it. First game was Nigeria 5, Zambia nil. This was the big one of the group stages. This was the two titans coming together. This is the game that I was at here in Casablanca at the Larbi Zaouli Stadium. A bit of a weird stadium, very small, kind of on the edge of the city. A bit of like concrete walls all around it, and it was a bit of a kind of strange stadium, especially given that last tournament I was here, all the games in Casablanca were hosted in the Stade Mohamed V, which is the huge stadium where Raja and Wydad Casablanca play. That one is being renovated for the men's AFCON. So we've kind of been shuffled into a couple of these smaller stadiums, which has been a bit of a weird experience, I gotta say. But let's get into this game. I mean, this was the big one. This was the attack versus defense. You know, the superstars versus the team. This was always going to be the kind of big one. And coming into this game, it was quite interesting because I coming into this game, and I think I said it on some of our podcasts, I was like, look, it's going to be really tight, but for me, Nigeria are the favorites. They're the big ones. Zambia are the kind of challengers. But when you got to the stadium, everyone and it must be because of the narrative that's built up here in Morocco. Everyone was saying, "Oh, it's Zambia. Zambia are the ones who are going to push for this. Zambia are the ones who are going to, take it to Nigeria. Nigeria are going to, struggle." I mean, all the Nigerian journalists were talking about how the day before Nora Hopto, the Zambia coach, just said, "We're going to hunt the Falcons," and there was just this huge narrative that like all the Nigerians were convinced that they were the underdogs, and I was like, "Hang on, like this is going to be a close game, no doubt." But here are the favorites. Like, let's get this clear. I'll hold my hands up. I was totally wrong. I did not. I thought this would be a tight game. I said in my pre-match analysis, I thought actually the way these teams will come at each other, they'll cancel each other out. It'll be a 0-0. It'll be 1-0 tight game. Because Zambia will struggle to break down that incredible Nigerian defense, and Nigeria, who struggled for fluency, wouldn't be able to get through Zambia. 2 minutes in fact, was even no, sorry, 1 minute in. The first minute, Osinachi Ohale scores from a brilliant Esther Okwanko free kick, and Nigeria are away. And from there, they dominated Zambia in every single aspect of the game. They were stronger, they were faster, they were more aggressive, they had more quality in the final third. And Zambia showed us the frailties of their defense, but in attack, Barbara Banda and Rachel Kundananji were completely marshaled from the Nigerian perspective. They only had a couple of half chances. I would say that one chance in the first half when Banda kind of got around the back and pulled it back, but the shot was missed. I think it might have been Grace Chanda or Chalufia, and Zambia just could not compete. Nigeria continued to dominate. Then Esther Okoronkwo turns from provider to finisher. Lovely cross from Rashida Ajibade, who'd been moved out to the wings, which for me is by far a better position for her than in that number 10, where I think she's been really poor, actually. But she lovely cross with the left foot. Esther Okoronkwo chests it down, finishes. And then right on the stroke of halftime, Zambia are really struggling, and it's Chimaka Nadozie, who had an excellent game in goal despite not making a save. She was fantastic in the way her distribution and the way she came out of goal. Comes out, lovely ball over the top, mix up in the Zambian defense, and Ihezuo is on hand to finish. And that was it. The game was done at halftime, honestly. Zambia came out, they tried to press, they tried to be a bit more adventurous. Hopto brought on some kind of attacking changes, brought on Frida Mokoma for Rachel Nachula, who'd been playing at fullback, brought on attacking players, and it just didn't work. And again, it was another set piece, another Esther Okowonko set piece. She whips it in. This time is the other center back, Oluwatosin Demehin, who had headers in it, 4-0. And then in the dying minutes, Folashade Ijamalusi gets the fifth. And it was a huge moment for her because prior to this game, she'd not started a single game at the WAFCON. This was her first ever competitive start for the Super Falcons. She'd only gotten 23 minutes before this game. And then some appearances and some friendlies. She plays in China, kind of a bit of an unknown quantity. Um, but she kind of put the icing on the cake in that sense, and it was great to see her scoring. And I think so much of this credit for this win, because it was a huge surprise, no one saw this coming, has to be with Justin Madugu. Because in those first games in the group stage, Nigeria were lethargic. In that first game, they did beat Tunisia 3-0, but they were struggling. Botswana, they needed a 90th minute equal winner. And against Algeria, they obviously drew 0-0. And a lot of it was the tactical and positional choices of him. So, you had Tony Payne, who for me is a really creative number 10. She was playing out on the wing. You have Rashida Ajibade, who for me is a really physical but technically gifted player but she needs space to operate. She was playing as a 10. She can't, for me, play as a 10. She can play a bit deeper or she can play out wide. She can't play as a 10. And then you had Asisa Oshwala, who for me, it's been a bit of a shame at this tournament, but this has very much been the tournament where we've seen this isn't her Nigeria team anymore. She scored in that first game off a set piece, but she's looked lethargic. She hasn't looked sharp. She hasn't looked at her best. And whereas in this game, Justin Madugu made those changes. He brought in Okoronkwo. He brought in Ihezuo, who both have been really good off the bench. He brought in Ijamalusi and Jennifer Echigine, who played kind of as two attacking kind of number eights ahead of Halimatu Allende, and they were excellent, those two. And Nigeria just were the better team. Nora Hapto kind of in her post match held her hands up and essentially said that she's like, "Look, we've been outplayed. They've been better than us in every single department. We just couldn't compete, and it's a huge shame." For Zambia, because I think they made so much progress. They got that draw against Morocco when they were probably the better team, and that's such the shame, right? This is what so many of these games hinge on, right? Is if Zambia had just not conceded that last minute equalizer to Morocco or had scored some of their chances against Senegal, they would have been first in that group thanks to goal difference. Um, and instead they had to play Nigeria, and they're gone now. So it's such as football, and I love this is why I love tournament football. But full credit to Nigeria. For me, I think when I ahead of this game, I was saying to a lot of people, look, for me, Nigeria are the best team at this tournament, but I don't have them as favorites because they've got such a tough run to the final. I think they are the favorites now. Even if they have to play South Africa and Morocco, I think they are the favorites because you've seen the depth they have, the amount of players they can call from the bench, and the fact that they still have not looked like conceding once. It is unbelievable, their defense. They haven't conceded a goal, and they have not come close to conceding a goal. In this game, I think they only had let in 5 shots, none on target. Nadosia didn't make a save. Um, and so for me that's why this team is special. This team, they came into this tournament with this whole mission X. We're gonna get that 10th title. Excuse me, I thought I was gonna sneeze there. We spoke to Ashley Plumpter ahead of this tournament, and she was saying like it feels different. This feels different. We're driven. We're together. Yes, we haven't been paid and we have so many issues off the pitch, but we've put that to one side. And Ajibade reaffirmed that in the post match. She said almost the same thing. And so for me, that was quite interesting. This like, they're all singing from the same hymn sheet, whereas a lot of of these countries, I think South Africa probably the best example, aren't. There's struggles, there's arguments, there's dissatisfaction. In Nigeria, they are driven, they are focused, and yeah, I think they for me are the favorites. They're now going to play South Africa in the next round. And for me, they'll be favorites for that game. And if they win that, they'll be favorites for the Morocco game. And that is the game they want to play. Let me tell you, these players, they want revenge. They want to play Morocco. And to be fair, if they win it, it will be an amazing story because in the last tournament, it was a low point for Nigeria at the WAFCON. It was the first time they never medaled. They didn't come first, second, or third. And it was the first time where they lost more than one game at the tournament, and they lost 3 to Morocco, to South Africa, and to Zambia. They've dispelled that first ghost by beating Zambia. They've got 2 more to go. Into the other game of that group, Morocco 3, Mali 1. Morocco, it wasn't as emphatic as the Nigeria win, but they were dominant and they were good, as we expected they would be. And for me, the one who really stood out this game, who hasn't quite hit it before this, was Sakina Ouazzara-Diki. She has come into this team and has kind of shown that electricity that, say, someone like Sanam Sudi, who has so much talent but doesn't quite have the physical attributes. Ouazzara-Diki does. She's fast. She's strong. She's very, very sharp. In the first couple minutes, she almost scored a lovely curling effort, and then in the 7th minute, she is the one who turns provider. Lovely ball from Shebek through to her, plays it across. Draidi's there to finish. And from that point on, Morocco were away. You know, they were the better side throughout than Mali. They dominated. Mali did have a disallowed goal in the first half for an offsides, but they weren't necessarily creating that much. But I'll say that Morocco were there were nerves. There were certainly nerves in the Olympic Stadium. You know, you could sense that they weren't quite comfortable. They didn't have that second goal. They didn't quite kind of kill the game until the 79th minute when it was Saudi who came off the bench, was brought down, and Traidi finished. And if you haven't seen her celebration, you should look it up. Superman celebration, punching the ground is a brilliant, brilliant image. And then late on in the game, Kenza Chappelle, who comes off the bench, she just has a floated cross that is controlled and from the goalkeeper and is fumbled into her own net by Karen Towan. And Mali, to be fair, did get a penalty back. Shabek gave a handball away in her own box, and so Agisa Traore did put kind of give some semblance of respectability to Mali. But this for me. I think I said it before. The quarterfinals was the most there was the most disparity. You know, Morocco were heavy favorites, and we saw that bear out. They were, you know, in terms of the XG, I think they created maybe a bit more than Nigeria. I'd have to check, but they're pretty close. They created a lot. They had loads of shots, loads on target. I think they had four big chances. So they look good. They look strong now. They don't look, you know, unbeatable. Mali definitely had their chances. They created some. Like I said, they had the offsides goal. They created a couple big chances themselves. And so for me, this Morocco team isn't, you know, impregnable, but they do. For me, the reason why I had them as my favorites after the group stages is because they have that easier run. You know, they don't rotate. They don't have the same depth as a Nigeria or even I would say as South Africa, but they've had gentler games, so they can rotate even if they don't have the depth so much, and they can, you know, they have that gentle kind of walk through to the semifinals and then to the final. Obviously, they'll play Ghana, and Ghana again for me, Morocco will be not the heavy favorites, but they will be significant favorites. Ghana nil, Algeria nil. Oh, whew. You know, the Zambia game and the Morocco game were exciting, thrilling, adventurous. You know, goals galore. Ghana Algeria game was a battle, a battle. We knew it would be. Algeria came into this game like Nigeria, having not conceded a single goal, and Algeria will leave the tournament having not conceded a single goal, which is pretty absurd. Um, the only team it reminds me of is the Algerian men's team in the Chan a couple of years ago when they did the same. I think they got knocked out to Senegal in the final, but they drew 0-0 in the final, so they kept clean sheets throughout the whole tournament. And so it seems to be an Algerian thing. And look, this is for me. This is the start of something really good for Algeria. They've got a lot of young players. They've got an excellent coach in Faris Ben DT. He obviously coached, I think, both Lyon and PSG in France. So if he sticks around, which I'm not sure if he will, but if he does, you know, this team has the makings of a team that will be serious, not in serious contenders next time, but I could easily see them. You know, they were one penalty shootout away from the semifinals. They do that the WAFCON next year. That they're at the World Cup. So for me, they're definitely ones to keep an eye out for in terms of emerging nations that can come up. In this game, they were exactly what we expected. They had more of the ball, like 57, 58% possession, controlled the game, but every time they get into the final third, they have nothing. There's no creativity, there's no threat. They're so slow on the transition. They play like really nice, intricate passes and flicks, and you know, it looks all good, but then once they get into the final third, there just isn't anything like that. And then that's what hit them. Whereas Ghana on the other side, they were missing Alice Kusi, which I think can't be underestimated in terms of attacking threat. She's probably been their best player going forward at this tournament. I think I've said this, you know, before that Ghana, they have these whole crop of attacking players that are all good. You know, none of them are amazing. They're all good. And so I think Bjorgakin, their coach, Kim Bjorgakin, has kind of had a problem where he keeps rotating them, and all of them kind of do all right in moments. Some of them do really well in moments, but there's no consistency. No one's really grabbed it. Kind of their opportunity. I would say maybe Chantal Boye-Lorca, the London City Lionesses player, has probably been their best player aside from Alice Kusi, but Kusi pulled out ahead of this game, literally on the day of, with I think a muscle injury, and that really hurt them. You could see that they really struggled to kind of get forward. They really struggled to create chances. Princess Marfa was probably their biggest outlet going forward. And look, they weren't terrible, but they clearly struggled to break down an Algeria side that were, very content to you know, keep the ball without being a threat. And you could tell that Algeria wanted this game to go late. They wanted to just keep it tight. And Ghana nearly scored it. Well, they did score a goal in the first half, which was excellent. Lovely ball through to, I think it was from Asantewa, but I'm not 100% sure. Through into Boye Khorka, who lovely held up the ball, cuts it back. Stella Nyameche gets the ball eventually, and then lovely finish. But it turns out that Boye Khorka was offside. So yeah, it was a tough watch. It was a tough game. I think Ghana will be happy, obviously, that they're through. They're in the semifinals. It's kind of a return for them because they've kind of been in the wilderness for almost 6 years now, and it's such a shame because this is what I really don't like about the WAFCON and how it's structured. Because it is the qualifiers for the World Cup, it means half the WAFCONs don't matter as much. So say, for instance, this WAFCON, there's not nearly as much writing on it as the last WAFCON or the next WAFCON because this one doesn't work. So it means that you've got half your tournaments aren't as valuable as the other half, which for me is just from a competitive standpoint is ridiculous. But what it also means is that if you miss out on a WAFCON, you're done for like 4 years, even six to an extent. So with Ghana in the last WAFCON, they were really unlucky. They get drawn against Nigeria. Same with Cote d'Ivoire. They get drawn against Nigeria in the qualifiers. Two of Africa's best teams. They miss out on the WAFCON. That like there's no other team. There's no team you don't want to play in qualifiers more than Nigeria. And they got drawn against them. And because they missed that, they don't qualify for the World Cup. Then the Ghanaian FA doesn't invest any money in them. The team kind of goes from really them and Cameroon being Nigeria's big threats over the last decades to suddenly they're nowhere. South Africa, Zambia, and Morocco completely replace them. So they kind of come back. And then again, another issue with the WAFCON is this one was meant to be last year. If it was, Ghana would have been coached by Nora Hoptel coming into this, who obviously had transformed this team. And it's such a shame that she didn't actually get to take this team to this tournament because she had, single-handedly transformed the Black Queens. But because the tournament got postponed a year, her contract isn't renewed, or she chooses not to renew it, actually, because she's not impressed with the way things are run. She goes to Zambia. Now, credit to Ghana, they've recovered well. They haven't had much time to prepare under their new boss, Björkgren, but they've done well to get through this. So for me, it's a big result for them. Cynthia Conlon saved a couple penalties in the shootout as well, so I think that bodes really well. They know that they can get through a penalty shootout if they make it attritional against Morocco. Obviously, Morocco have good penalty takers of their own. Ghislaine Chapak is probably their third or fourth penalty taker, which is kind of very surprising. So that game will be attritional. It will be it will be an amazing atmosphere, I'm sure, in Rabat, but I think Ghana will be up against it. In the final game of the quarterfinals, Ghana took on Senegal, and this was a 0-0, but it was quite different from the Algeria game, which the Algeria game, there was nothing. There was no creativity. There was nothing, aside from that offside goal. In this game, South Africa, it was very much South Africa huffing and puffing. They really they wanted to break down this Senegalese side, but they really struggled to. They tried to create lots of chances, but they couldn't. Senegal made it a really physical game. I really enjoyed that kind of midfield battle. I think Fall, second, Diakate, and Diakate in particular were really good. They just disrupted South Africa. They disrupted them. They didn't let them get into their rhythm. They didn't let them get into their flow, particularly going forward. And credit to Senegal, they did have a couple chances. Ndiaye had a really good one in the first half where she beat her marker. Mama Diop almost scored in the 90th minute with a looping header. So, I mean, credit to Senegal. I think they managed the game perfectly. It just didn't work out for them. It just didn't fall the rub of the, they didn't get the rub of the green. Banyana Banyana, on the other hand, I think Desiree Ellis won't be happy. They didn't play well, but this is kind of what they do. In the last tournament, they did this. They stumbled through their games against Zambia, against Botswana, against Tunisia. They didn't look good. They didn't find the rhythm. But when they stepped up was in those big games. They outplayed Nigeria. They outplayed Morocco. Those were the two big games at the last WAFCON, and they really stepped up. This one, up until extra time, they really struggled to create anything. In extra time, they actually did. They'd won disallowed goal, lovely ball from Refilwe Jane, who's just, what a classy operator. I mean, it's crazy to me that she plays for TS Galaxy right now in South Africa, because she should still be playing at Milan where she was, or at a big European team. She's such a classy operator, superb ball. Ramelepe with a clever finish, but she's offside. Hilda Magaya comes close in extra time as well. Lovely 1-2 with her and between her and Seopa Senwe, but it's well saved. And then they had a penalty, but it was adjudged to be VAR, and this was one of the closest calls that I've seen. I could not believe. I'm so happy I wasn't the referee in this game because you had these couple angles and you couldn't really tell. Did Wally Mate Njai get the touch on the ball? Did she not? I think she did, and the penalty was reversed and it went to penalties. But the one thing I will say that is positive of South Africa is the way they managed the penalties was they did it as champions. They were superb. Their penalties were fantastic. Every single one, top bins. Keeper didn't have a chance. And Dile Dlamini, we know she's a great penalty saver. I mean, in previous tournaments, she's come off the bench for Kaylin Swart for penalties. It's what she does. She is a penalty expert. And so she made two saves. She looked good. She has that personality that I think puts off players. She's kind of not quite so crazy, but a bit of the Emilio Martinez about her, the kind of smiley, kind of a bit crazy, loves to celebrate. And I think that bodes well for South Africa. Looking to their game against Nigeria, I think it's tempting to say Nigeria are heavy favorites. South Africa's tournament has been disrupted. They haven't played well. There's not a happy camp. There's been issues behind the scenes. They haven't found their rhythm, and they had to go to penalties to beat Senegal. And then on top of that, because of that, they play an extra 30 minutes from Nigeria. Nigeria have an extra day of rest because they played first, and South Africa have to travel from Wijda to Casablanca. And they didn't fly. I'll tell you that. They drove, and it's like a 6-hour drive. So the day after you've played 120 minutes to drive across the country is not great for recovery. So on the face of it, there are so many things in Nigeria's favor looking towards this semifinal. So many things, and they will be favorites. There is no doubt. But the one thing that makes me still skeptical of this Nigeria side is right. They've played 4 games: 1-0, 1-1-0. That 1-0 they needed a Ehizua goal in the 90th minute. The other 2 games where they did score goals: 3-0 against Tunisia, 5-0 against Zambia. Both those games, they didn't create loads, but they took their chances superbly. But which is one thing. But secondly, both those games they scored free kicks within the first couple minutes. Against Tunisia, it was a Babajide cross and a Oshuala finish, and against Zambia, it was Esther Okoronkwo free kick and it was a Ohale header. I still think that this team struggles for creativity. I still think that they struggle to play well when they are not in the lead. So for me, if South Africa can keep it tight at the beginning, they don't let Nigeria score early, I think this is going to be a tight game, right? Now, having said that, South Africa are shaky off set pieces. They always have been. It's always been an issue. This tournament, they haven't conceded any, I don't think, offset pieces. They've only conceded 1 goal to Opa Clement from Tanzania. But against they have teams have come very close offset pieces. They've still looked very shaky. And of course, the World Cup, we saw how bad they were in defending set pieces against like Sweden and the Netherlands. And Nigeria have shown they're superb off set pieces. They've got Okoronkwo and Babajide if she plays as set piece takers. Ajibade, I don't think, has got a bad delivery on her either. And they've got a huge team. I mean, Ashley Plumpter could have scored 3 or 4 goals this tournament off set pieces alone. Ohale, Demehin, like Ajibade, Okoronkwo, Ihezu are both big players. So they've got such a physically dominant team, and South Africa aren't a physically dominant team. But if Nigeria don't score early and they struggle to create chances outside of set pieces, I struggle to see where they get goals. And like I said, South Africa have only conceded 1 goal as well. They're not a kind of porous. They're not Zambia by any stretch of the imagination. They've got a much better keeper because for me, Andile Dlamini is the second best goalkeeper in Africa. Only Nadozie is ahead of her, and it's not a huge gap. And I think defensively, Mbane has probably been one of the best centre backs of this tournament. They've got a really settled back four. I've been really impressed with Fikide, the left back, South Africa, Fikide Magama at right back, Dlamini at left back. Obviously, they're both attacking fullbacks, but they've shown that they're strong. And Makubela has been a good centre back as well with South Africa, or with Mbane at the back. If Nigeria don't score early from a set piece, I don't see where they're scoring goals. And that's when this game can become a problem because Nigeria have had positive momentum throughout this tournament. But when they're presented with a low block with a team that can defend well, which South Africa can, they struggle. So for me, Nigeria are heavy favorites. Don't get me wrong. But South Africa are not out of this. and they have the tools, and they've shown in that penalty shootout they can take it late, and they're happy to, and they'll be confident of beating Nigeria if it goes to penalties. So my predictions, honestly, Nigeria and Morocco will get to the final. But I think particularly for that second game, it will be closer than you think, is what I'm saying. But if you enjoyed our content, if you enjoyed my content, Ferdows's content, it's been a long summer, Club World Cup, WAFCON. Unfortunately, we won't have anyone at the Chan. That is kicking off in just a couple of weeks, but we'll probably do some podcasts on it. Please do give us a follow, give us a like, give us a subscribe on YouTube, on all our socials. If you hate what I'm saying, if you think I'm just some stupid white guy, please say in the comments, tell me on the Whistle Podcast, OTW_podcast on socials. And yeah, let's keep this brag going, huh?